Hello and welcome to another edition of Motorsport Atlantic, brought to you by the members of the Atlantic Sports Car Club. My name is Debbie Clark. Tonight's show was actually taped last year. The gentleman that we went to visit in Dartmouth, Mr. Peter Kingston, is a fascinating man, and it's one of our favorite shows that we've ever gone on site to do. He's got a fantastic car. He's done a lot of work to it. I don't know if he still has it or not, but I know he'll enjoy seeing it again, and I know you'll enjoy seeing it again. And of course, to all of our new watchers in Halifax, Dartmouth, enjoy. Here we have Peter Kingston with his beautiful Mercedes. And you put a lot of time into it. A half hour probably won't be enough to exactly go into everything that you've done for this vehicle. I'm totally impressed with it. It's just beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. There's 6,000 hours work here. Yeah. 6 years and 6,000 hours work here.
And it shows, too. Yeah. Now, you've been building things for quite a while. Let's give them a little bit of background on yourself.
I was sort of a mechanical technician doing research work all my life for Atomic Energy of Canada, and for Bedford Institute of Oceanography, where we do all research into all mechanical problems and try to help the scientists out and, you know, get them going, yeah.
So you've been used to thinking on your feet and making your own ideas and things for the jobs required?
Yes, pretty well. That's the whole idea. They'll come up with a bit of a problem. They want to scrape some bugs from under the ice or something, or take a core sample of the ocean floor, and it's 2 miles down, and they know what they want, and we just have to find a way to do it, you know, and we usually succeed, yeah. Get a couple of patents out of it, and a lot of great guys down there all doing the same thing, you know, so we all got to see, and that's what we were paid to do, and we did it, yeah.
Sounds like a great job.
Yeah, I even got paid for it, too, yeah.
And you retired a few years ago, and now you've had a few projects since before this one. This one looks pretty massive, but you've done a lot more before this.
Oh, yes. Well, beside houses and stuff like that, I built an airplane, and it was a 35-foot wingspan airplane, and that was a project that's a lot of fun, but it was a lot of disappointments in this particular project because it was supposed to be a flying boat at first. And the guy in Edmonton who designed it, he took a professionally built plane and decided to make it to go under the water. And then he sold the plans to everybody, and I started this, and I built the fuselage and everything. But people ahead of me found that it wouldn't come off the water. It wouldn't unstick, you know. Oh. And it was called the Teal, this plane, incidentally. So a couple of guys had a teal burning party, you know, and there was me stuck with this plane that wouldn't get off the water. But, luckily enough, I met a designer, an aircraft designer, airframe designer, and he said, well, look, he said, the best thing you can do is to go back to the original plane, the French Miranda. You've got the wings, you've got the tail, you've got the other parts, scrap the fuselage and start again. So we started again, and I had 2 other partners, very nice people down here, and a few years we were flying. One of the fellows was a violinist, but he was also a professional pilot. And the other guy was a doctor, and so we got on great, you know. Nobody's interfered with anybody else's ideas. When I said file this, they filed it, you know, yeah. So it was a great project, and it was assembled right here in this garden here, and it flew in 1971 from Halifax International Airport. Yeah, and I sold it about 6-7 years ago, yeah.
And it's still being flown, you say? It's still at Stanley today?
Yeah, it's still being flown down at Stanley, yeah. Well, it's a nice little plane.
You had mentioned earlier about having it here in the yard with the wings impinging onto the neighbor's property here and into their garage.
Yes. Oh, yeah, sticking right out, and Jack, when he mowed the lawn, he was very concerned about getting grass sprayed all over the fuselage, and other people would come from Woodland Avenue to have a look at it, and Sunday mornings was quite a chaos out here, yeah.
I can imagine. You were quite an attraction. So you built a boat after that, or a few boats you mentioned?
Well, mainly cabin cruisers and stuff like that, you know, yeah. I always, you know, look upon it, if you want anything, you know, and you can't afford to buy it, just go out and make it, you know. So, and that's exactly what I did, and thousands of other people do the same thing, you know. It's like a house, you know, you get a part of a house and you finish it off yourself, and some old houses we had in Deep River, we used to jack them up and put a basement underneath them and everything, you know, dig out 400 tons of sand by hand, and because now we're all paying for it, our backs aren't straight anymore.
Well, you're a very dedicated person. I don't know. If I wanted something like this, I'm afraid I'd have to buy it, because this is so beautifully done. You're obviously very talented. It's a 1935 Mercedes-Benz Special Roadster replica. But this is not what you wanted to build originally when you thought of a car. Tell us about that.
Okay, what I wanted to build first of all was some really jazzed up sports car. Something after the lines of the Gullwing Lombardini, the Italian sports car. And this friend of mine, George Fowler, who's an excellent artist, he did some sketches for me and he sketched up this car and it looked magnificent. And I made a couple of wooden models of the car to scale. And in the meantime, I'd already bought a 1969 Mercedes 230, knowing I was going to build a car, and I wanted an engine, and I needed a front end and a rear end and everything. So we took all those pieces and laid them all out in the garage, and then tried to work out how we could work this Lamborghini system in. And they have an engine just behind the driver, sideways. And after weeks of fiddling and everything, we just found there was no way I could get that drivetrain to work without going to a lot of expense. So one day, George at work, he was sitting there in his office, and I was just eating lunch at the desk, and he came running in. He said, "How about building this?" And he handed me a sketch of this car, a 1935 Roadster, and I thought, Jesus, that's just the thing we're going to build, you know. Just the thing. It just looked perfect, you know. So that's what I did. So I laid it out for a chassis, and then I gave him all the sizes. And from there, he drew the body for me. You see, and in the meantime, we'd bought every book we could on Mercedes. Yeah. So, and to get all the photographs. And once we got all the photographs, and he had the sizes of the chassis, it was a matter of designing the body all around there. So, and then in the meantime, I had met a fellow from England who was this, and I got to know him quite well. And I went over to his factory in England and actually worked there for a week, and helped him out a little bit, held things while he hammered, and picked up every bit of information I could. So that enabled me to do it correctly, you know, without having to search libraries and everything like that. So I was very fortunate there.
That's right. It was a shop that actually manufactured vehicles or replicas?
No, what he did, they would get an old chassis of a Rolls-Royce, a Bentley, an Alfa Romeo, or something like that. They would go into the body shop, the old parts would all be torn off and thrown away, and they would start from the chassis up and rebuild the cars to the original specifications, yeah. And all with ash and all with rolled aluminum, and they were beautiful cars. And he would send some of them to the United States, and they would come over, him and his wife, on the QE2, and they would have 2 cars in the hold, and they would come out at New York State and the docks there, and they would go on transporters, and they would go down to auction, down to Oklahoma, and Dick would go down there, and they'd get a holiday out of it, and then he would get commission on the sale. Yeah. So he was a nice, very nice fellow. And after the car was in progress, I asked him if he could make my wings, and he said yes. He gave me a price, and a very good price, and I sent him over the model of the wings, the shape, and took them all over in a suitcase and assembled them in his workshop, and then from there I left them there, and a year later they were sent over here by freight and landed in the dock here. Yeah. So.
When you say wings now, of course, we're referring to the front fenders, the sweep of the front fenders down to the running board.
That's right. Well, you can see that they're not fenders, really, and they call them wings because they look like wings, I suppose. And what he did was, once he had the shape, he then made up a heavy jig out of 3/4 plywood to make them, you see. And then he rolls all the pieces, and then he welds them all, and he hammers them and everything. And so when you get them, there's all welds all over. I think there's 10 pieces of aluminum right from here to the front piece. And,
really?
And then he came over for a holiday here, and he helped me to assemble them onto the car. And then he didn't actually do too much work. He just told me what to do, and he checked all the work I'd already done, and pointed out a few things, and I thought I did a pretty good job so far, but he showed me a couple of little tricks of the trade, and so I was really fortunate there, you know. So this car is made exactly the same way as they were made in 1935. And the Morgan sports car today is still made the same way. It's made in England, and they make 20 or 30 a year, I'm not sure. and very expensive. You have to wait about 3 or 4 years to get one, but they are made on an ash frame, and aluminum is put on top, and they're all beaten out now. Funny thing, the things they used to tell me about the people who would make wings, you know. You get one man, he could make right-hand wings and couldn't make left-hand wings. And I found this. I had to change the rear wings. And so I had jigged up and made everything, and I made this one, and I thought, well, Jesus, the next one's going to be easy, but the next one was harder, because I was thinking of the one I just made, and it was supposed to be opposite. So they would have men in the factory, they would have the jigs, and they would have men to make right-hand parts and men to make left-hand parts,
Depending if you were right or left-handed, I wonder, would that help? No?
No, I don't think so, no. No, nothing that simple, no.
Well, you sure did pick up a lot, because we have named, we could in the garage a little earlier, name off a few things we haven't made, and that's a very short list. There's just about everything else that is either brass and electroplated or aluminum, and to look at your garage, I'm impressed that you did everything in that area. I'm so used to seeing bandsaws and all sorts of equipment, and you've done a lot by hand.
Oh, yes, you have to make everything by hand. It's a funny process, you know. You start off, you never think ahead. I don't particularly think ahead. I don't think, well, next Christmas I have to make a windshield. You know, I just wait till the time comes, and now I say, well, now I've got to do the windshield. So you sit down, you start thinking about how you're going to build a windshield, and you make a few sketches. You sit there, maybe have a couple of beers, and then sit there later. And then you say, okay, this is how I'm going to make the windshield. So you just do it, you know. So then 2 weeks later, the windshield is made. It's bolted on in place, and then you just forget all about it. And you say, right, next thing I've got to do is make wheels. So you start making wheels, and this is the way you go. It's a lot easier than it seems, you know. It really is. You don't have to be too brilliant.
Well, I'm going to, yes, I don't believe that quite, but I know that if you probably stop to think about it too much, it would become so overwhelming and overpowering. You just, I can't do this, and just throw the plans in the corner. But you've certainly taken a piece at a time. There are some beautiful pieces on this car. The steering wheel that you've made, and I know we're going to get a shot of that soon, that is just beautiful. Okay, what we're going to have a look at now is the engine, the power plant here, and this is one of the original pieces that you picked up even before you knew you were building this kind of car.
Yes, that's correct. This is from the 1969 230 Mercedes, which I purchased. And it was in good condition, except that it had corroded, and it only had 47,000 miles on. But there was a lot of corrosion, and the crankshaft needed being reground. But other than that, everything was fine. So I put a lot of time in, renewed all the bearings, and renewed all the seals, and brought it back to 0 hours. And it runs pretty quietly. I've got to do a bit of fine-tuning. But so the engine is a 6-cylinder overhead camshaft, 2.3 litre. The original engine in the 1935 Mercedes was a straight 8, 5-litre massive engine with a supercharger. And it could go around 100 miles an hour, and it was 130 horsepower. This particular engine at 2.3 litre develops 130 horsepower. So you can see modern engines have got a lot smaller to provide for the same horsepower.
Very efficient. Very efficient. You had mentioned, too, about running into a gentleman in the valley, and you picked up a few things from him, and especially the plate that you have, the registration, the unmarked registration plate.
Oh, yeah, we have an unmarked registration plate here, and it is a genuine Mercedes, and I really no idea how he got it, you know. So one day I'm going to stamp the weights on, but it's a bit of a problem. If you notice any of these plates, they're all stamped in reverse. The numbers stick out.
Yes.
It's not like going out and buying a set of letters and number stamps, so I really have to think about that. Probably have to go down Volvo and ask that for me, you know. Yeah.
And, of course, the registry motor vehicles, that was probably something that everybody's thinking of, too. To make a vehicle like this is almost mind-boggling anyway, but to get it ready through the road with the help of the registry motor vehicles is mind-boggling, too. How did you do that?
Oh, well, I got in line like everybody else, and then got assigned to a wicket, and I got a summer student, which I was a bit shocked at, you know. But anyhow, if I explained it correctly, and I've taken hundreds of photographs of the car in every step, and so I had this album along with me, and I showed them the pictures, and he went and got his supervisor, and we all went through it, and course, they were interested in getting tax money, but as I'd built everything and purchased everything, all the hardware locally, I'd paid the sales tax, so that wasn't any problem there. So they got the head supervisor, and they went through it again and said, well, you know, where did you get these wings? I said, well, they were made in England, and I paid tax on them, and I made the rest, and I made all the radiator grill and everything, and here it shows me making these parts. And so they accepted it and said, well, that's fine. We'll give you a vehicle identity number, which you must fix to the car, and we'll register the car as a 1935 Mercedes-Benz replica, and so that's what it's registered as, yeah. And I had to get the justice of the peace to say that I had fixed it to the right car, and I was a good and honest citizen and everything like that, yeah.
Yes, you're certainly all of that. So you've got it safety inspected and roadworthy and driving, and the rad itself, the rad cover, you probably get a shot of that. You were explaining that you've made that. First, of course, you've done a lot in wood, and I do have a piece of something, a template here. And what we're going to show you we're going to show all of these beautiful things. We have so much to show you. You made originally the rad in wood, designed it back from there, shaved and planed it down as you required, then made it in brass and had it plated.
That's correct, yeah. First of all, I made it out of 2x4s and 2x6s, heavy cross-section, knowing in the end I was going to have to form the brass around it to get the right shape. So once I got that in place, then I could get the firewall, and by going along with straight edges and all the way around, and then I corrected the wooden one. And then when it came time, I made the brass one around the wooden one, and the wooden one's sitting in my attic. I don't know really why I'm saving it, because I'm not going to build another one.
Well, for much the same reasons, I'm sure you save these, because you can show us what that piece is exactly.
Yeah, like before you make any part, you really want to see what it's got to look like, and you need a form anyhow. So for this bracket here of the windshield, you make this, first of all, out of wood. Whoops, wrong way around. And you say, well, that's what I want, this is how it's going to be. Now, we're made in brass, so it's not too difficult. You just get one piece of brass and a simple bend round that way there, another piece of brass, a simple bend round that way. Then two pieces of brass, one on either side, and then it's silver soldered around all the seams, and then you file it up afterwards, and then you put a backing plate to it, and that's how you make it. And it's the same with these pieces here. Yeah. These are very difficult to make because they're such a funny shape.
Yeah.
And there's two of them again. Yeah.
Right. That's something you had been mentioning with the steering wheel. You had fun with the steering wheel. Everything had to be matched and symmetrical and perfect, and the steering wheel was a one-off, and you could do whatever you liked there.
Oh, yeah. It was a lot of fun building the steering wheel, yeah. It's just good fun. And I was a bit worried about it at first. I thought, well, you know, you'd probably need a big lathe or something, but I didn't have a big lathe, so it's just a matter of cutting it all out in the bandsaw and filing and sanding, and that's it.
Okay, you had been mentioning, of course, with the different molds and how you made some of these things. Now, this little section here, just show us these running lights.
Oh, yeah, okay. First of all, I had a lovely pair of lights which I purchased off this fella who I bought a lot of little pieces of. And then lovely chrome-plated lights, and I had them on, and then somebody pointed out to me that they were lights off a 1953 MG, I think that's what it was, you know, and I was horrified, you know, that there are people in the world who know about these things, you know, and I didn't know anything about it. And oh yeah, here is the light here, and this is the one I had originally, and you know, and I thought it looked pretty good, you know, but then they come along and said, well, MG, so. Okay, back to the book. So I got all the books out of the Mercedes pictures of the cars, and this light was standard on nearly all of the Mercedes in that era, so necessary on this sports car. So I decided there, okay, this is the shape, so I made up a wooden model first of the shape. And I just
oh,
put,
right,
yeah.
I'll hold this for you then.
So, okay, so that was the shape it had to be. So now I really didn't know how to do it, but so I knew that this piece here could be separate. So anyhow, so I started brass out, and I set the brass on top, and wherever it touched here, I would hit with a hammer, and nearly drove everybody in the house mad. It's tap, 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 you know. And because the brass you have to anneal after every 2 or 3 hammers, and so you have to make it red hot and dump it in water, then you carry on. And in the end, I got the brass formed right down to this shape. And then, of course, I had to make a lens, so I got another block of wood, and then I hollowed this out and used body fill and everything, and knew that this was the shape the lens had to be. Yes. So we just sat that in the drill press there, and I got a flat piece of plexiglass. We heated up with a hot air gun, put that over, and just press this in. And then out come one lens, you know. Then I got the right coloured plastic I wanted and made 2 more. Then there's a day's work there, and could have made hundreds, but I only had one car. You know.
So you have a few spare lenses around.
That's right, yeah.
Tell us exactly what was involved here.
Yeah, okay, so to make it look like the original 1935, I had to do a little cheating, and I still wanted to use the standard wheels that would fit the standard Michelin tyre. And so what I did, I just put in 1 false row of spokes. Now these are the pieces of 3/16 dowling wood, and they're just attached into this PVC pipe. And there's 28 spokes, and they had a little piece of square stuff and to authenticate where you tightened and adjusted in the real wheel. In the old days, of course, when you had to take the wheel off and you jacked the car up, you undid this big nut, was really all it is, and then once that was off, you slid the wheel off and you put the spare on. So I had to make these, and so there's 4 of them, and these are right-hand threads on the right-hand side of the car, and on the other side of the car they have to be left-hand threads, because if you lock your wheel, they will come spinning off. So if you lock this wheel when you're going forward, it will try to tighten. So on this, you can undo this. There we go. I'm going to have to use 2 hands here. So now I can get to my 5 standard nuts and take the wheel off just as you would change any wheel on any Mercedes. So this is 1/2-inch aluminum, and this is PVC, sheet PVC threaded there. And then these pieces are added afterwards. Then you make all these little star things. And so quite a bit of work there. I forget how many days it was to do that.
It must be easy to lose track because it looks fairly simple, but when you take it off and you see the work involved, it probably took you quite a few days. And they look authentic. They look wonderful. The inside of the car is walnut. You've hand-framed, hand-designed all of this, and especially the steering wheel. Tell us how you did that.
Oh, okay. The original steering wheel that I had looked just like a standard steering wheel. It was a little too big in diameter, so I realized I had to make something different. So to go about making a steering wheel I really didn't know what to do at first. So I can take this off, and you can see a little bit better inside. I'll just pull this horn off, and you can see that. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see it's made up of 4 sections, 4 spokes, and these are all bolted into a aluminum rim all the way around. Once I got these out in the bandsaw, and then they're all screwed together, and then once I got that, then I started cutting up pieces of walnut, routing them out to fit in behind there, and fitted those all the way round. And once all that was all done, was to repeat the process and stagger these pieces and put the top on. So now this was all square section, and then it was just a matter of putting it on the bench and filing away, and then putting in the finger grips at the back with a half-round file.
Oh, yes.
So you can so that wasn't too bad. But so that's the horn, and now all the dash is all walnut too, and all this part is walnut. All these are all walnut, even walnut knobs for that.
Looks like you have a defrost.
Pardon?
Do you have a defrost?
Oh yes, it's all there, yep.
See the gauges and the switches?
So you can just turn that, and there's all the defrost. It comes out the slots there. So it's a real modern car. It has all the traffic signals and all the pollution control in. So if you wanted to drive it in California, you could. The gear shift knob and the I'm not quite sure really what you call this part. What would you call
Console?
that? Yeah, console, yeah. That was a strange thing. I made the console, and I made it a little different to what it is now. And my daughter, I said, look, Susan, I said, I want you to get in the car and adjust the seat to see how you feel. And she's a little shorter than me, so she jumped in and slid the seat forward, shut the ashtray and turned on the cigarette lighter. Jesus, was I ever mad? So I had to take it out. I put it on the bandsaw. I sawed one inch right off there and put 4 wood screws and shoved it back. So that's another thing you learn.
Yes, and you've done a lot of work with you were telling us about getting the leather to recover the seats, and the seats look like they might be pretty comfortable. You might have to be of a specific dimension.
They look comfortable, but they are a little hard, and I have to do some more work on that. What I did, I made a solid base and gave it to the upholsterer, and he was only able to put an inch of foam on it, you see. So I'm going to take all that apart one day, or I don't know. But the seats are fully adjustable, and you can change the angle. You can slide it forward. You can change the angle, so like that.
And of course,
this tyre is really a wooden tyre. It's made all of wood, laminated out of plywood, and Varrola pine door frames. I went and bought some Varrola pine. And did this. When I decided to put the spare tyre on the back, I was going to put another Michelin on the back, and it looked silly. The Michelins were 8.5 inches wide, had a fancy tread for all driving. Certainly didn't look anything like the tyre that was on the original car. The original tyres were all Dunlop in those days, and so I got the books out and had a look, and it was just a plain tread, so I decided to make one, and it took me 10 days. It's all laminated up and all just done on a bandsaw. This is half a rim, and it has the 28 spokes, as I mentioned earlier on, at the front, and has the 42 spokes at the back. There's one more thing that is very interesting, which I haven't done. 28 is divisible by 7, and so every 4th space there was on all the old cars was a threaded bolt that came out. So there were 7 of them all the way around, and they put lead washers over these and had a little chrome cover over the top, and that's how they balanced the wheels. They were balanced, and then they put the chrome cover back on. But I do intend to do it. And this is a piece of PVC there. This screws on, and this is an that I borrowed and sort of filled in, and so that's the story on the spare tyre.
Miss Kingston will never use that frying pan again. Does she know it's missing? So how many miles do you have on the Mercedes?
We have 4. I've been around the block about 4 or 5 times, and then around Dartmouth once, and very embarrassing experience driving the car. People jumping out the sidewalk waving at you and screaming. You daren't stop. People start poking their fingers at it. You know. So it's, I just built the car because I wanted to build the car, and I probably will now sell it and move on to something else. Yeah.
So it is for sale. You will be willing to let go all of this 6 years in your workshop?
Oh yeah, why not? Yeah, you know, you can't keep these things forever. No.
So what's your next project? Working in the kitchen, you've been telling me, yes?
I rebuilt the kitchen, so I might try and make some fine furniture this year. You know, these fancy corner cabinets and with curved glass and all that. I've never done that, so that sounds like a good job.
Well, Peter Kingston, if you do furniture with what you've done with this automobile, you're going to have another full-time career on your hands. This is just incredible. I'm very impressed. You've done a lot of wonderful work. And like I say, from the few tools that you've had in the shop, you're obviously a very talented man. Thank you very much for taking time to be with us tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Call us if you make another car. I'd love to see it. This is Debbie Clark. That's all for Motorsport Atlantic. Good night.